Okay, so what we're going to be looking at here is mean, median, mode, and range. Now, mean, median, mode, those are just ways to measure the center of a given data set or a set of numbers, okay? They just measure, in a sense, the middle number given in a set of data, in a set of values. Now, the mean, in order to find that, another word for it you might think of is average. You add all the numbers together and divide by the number there are. For instance, if there's 10 numbers, you would add those 10 numbers together and divide by 10, okay? It's just the average of a given data set. Now, the median, that's the middle of the data set, the exact middle, okay, in terms of the list of values that you're given. Now, there's two different situations you can have. It could be that you have an odd number set, in which case you'd only have one middle number, or if you have an even number set, like 10 or 12, something like that, you could have, in that case, two middle numbers, in which case, in order to find the median, you would find the mean or the average of the two middle values, okay? So what that means is, if you didn't have an odd number set, like maybe 9 numbers or 11 numbers, let's say you had an even number, like there's 12 numbers there, you're going to end up with two numbers in the middle, and you'd have to add those two numbers and divide by 2, okay? You would average those two numbers together, and that would be your median. And the mode is the number or the value that occurs the most frequently, okay? Now, that could be different in different situations depending on the set of values that are given. There could be one mode, in other words, just one number that's repeated the most, or no mode, none of the numbers are repeated. Or there could be more than one. For instance, maybe you have 3 that's repeated a couple of times, and maybe 5's repeated a couple of times. And since they're repeated the same number of times, there could be 2 modes, okay? Or sometimes referred to as bimodal, okay? Now, the range, that's a measure of variation. So these other guys are a measure of center, okay? This guy is a measure of variation, okay? Now, to find the range, or the spread, so to speak, you take the largest number, the greatest value, and you subtract the least value, okay? So it says it's the difference of the greatest value and the least value. In math, difference is subtraction. So we take the largest number in the set minus that smaller number, and that gives us the range, okay? Now, what we're going to look at here is we're going to look at one example together here, and then maybe we'll look at a median example on another one. But let's find the mean, median, mode, and range of this data set. Now, for me, the easiest way I would think to start off is to rewrite these numbers in order from least to greatest, okay? So the smallest number I see is 5, and I'm going to cross that off. Next smallest number I see is 6. Then I see 7. There's actually 2 7s. Then 7.5. 8.5 and 8.5, so we're crossing both of those guys out. And then 3 9s, it looks like. 1, 2, 3. And then a 12. Now, let's find mean, median, equals, mode, and the range. And it might actually be easier to do mean, mode, and range first, okay? Since we have it like this. This just helps us out with being able to find these values. Now, the mean, all we have to do is add all these numbers together and divide by the number there are. So there are 1, 2, I'm going to count it out loud, but this is basically what I'm doing, okay? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 numbers. That's an odd set of numbers, okay? That means we're going to have one middle number when we get to the median. Keep that in mind. But to find the mean, we're going to add all these numbers together. There's 11 of them, and divide by 11. So you can use a calculator for this. So we have 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7.5 plus 8.5 plus 8.5 plus 9 plus 9 plus 9 plus 12. And then we take 88.5, that's what they add up to be, and divide it by 11, because there's 11 numbers. Now, on your calculator, it turns into a number that isn't so nice. That's okay. Let's round the 2 decimal places and say that it's 8.05. 8.05. Okay, so that's the mean. That's the average. Okay. Now, median, we'll come back to that because I want to look at it a couple different ways. The mode is the number that occurs the most frequent. So look for a number that's repeated the most times. Well, 7's repeated twice, 8.5 is repeated twice, but 9 is repeated 3 times. So it occurs the most often, so that would be the mode. 9 is the mode. And the range, remember that's a measure of variation in a sense it's a spread. We take the largest number, which is 12, minus the smallest number, which is 5. 12 minus 5 is 7. Okay? So that's the range. Now the median, there's a couple different ways we can do this. I just want to show you what would be the typical way and then maybe with an equation, okay? Now since it's an odd number set, we should only have one number in the middle, okay? Again, if we had two numbers, let's say if we had two numbers like 4 and 5, those guys ended up being the middle numbers, then we'd have to add those two numbers together. Whoops, go back. Add those two numbers together and divide by 2, okay? So if you have two middle numbers, you got to average them. If you only have one, then that's the median, okay? So in this case, one of the ways we could approach this is just cross off both ends until you get to the middle, and whatever you find in the middle, that's the guy that you want, okay? So our median here is 8.5, okay? Now, another way I want to look at this, if we want to kind of add a side note up here, anytime we have an odd number set, let's try to write odd a little bit better, you can take the number of values, the number of the, I don't want to get tongue-tied here, but the number of the numbers that you have, however many numbers you have, add that to 1 and divide by 2, and that will tell you what position to count to in order to tell what position or what number's position you're looking for the median. And hopefully that'll make more sense when we do it here in a second. In our case, there was 11 numbers. So if we took 11 plus 1 divided by 2, 11 plus 1 is 12, right? 12 divided by 2 is 6. So if I count to the sixth number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's the middle number, okay? Now that's for an odd number set. If we have an even number set, remember that's when we have two numbers in the middle, you could just do n divided by 2, and then find that number and the number that follows right after it, and those two numbers, remember there's going to be two numbers, you need to average them together and divide by 2. So let's try that with this one, because I think this one's even. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, an even number. Let's first write it from least to greatest. We have 2, 3, 3, 3, and then we have 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, and 12. Okay? Now, I'm just focusing on the median right now. We can do the rest of this in class together. But this is an even number set. So notice there's going to be two middle numbers here. So let's look at it the first way that we looked at. Cross out the ends. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Boom. This is the two middle numbers. So remember, we would have to add those two together and divide by 2. Well, 5 plus 6 is 11. 11 divided by 2 is 5.5. So the median would be 5.5. Now, if that doesn't work for you, let's say there's like 30 numbers and you just don't want to go through and cross them all out or whatever, you could just take n over 2, the number that there are, find that number and the number that follows right after it, add those two together and divide by 2. So how many numbers did we have? Well, again, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if I take 10 divided by 2, 10 divided by 2, that's 5. So count to 5 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice, that's one of our middle numbers, right? Take that number and the number that follows right after it, add those two together and divide by 2, and we still get the same answer of 5.5. So that's just another way that we can approach this in order to find the median, okay? So just to recap, the mean, add all the numbers and divide by the number there are. Median is the middle number. If it's odd, there's one number. If it's even number set, add the two middle numbers and divide by 2. Mode is the number that occurs most frequently, and range is the largest number minus the smallest number.